focus with Ejaz here. The two-day visit to Pakistan of Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was significant at various levels. Last time Lavrov was in Pakistan was in 2012. During this visit, Lavrov had substantive meetings with Pakistani leadership, and both sides expressed a desire to forge a stronger partnership in areas of energy, defense, counterterrorism, economy, technology, and trade. Russia, like Pakistan, is strongly invested in the peace process in Afghanistan. As global power configurations undergo changes, Moscow and Islamabad also share a broad perspective on global and regional developments. Last February, a contingent of Russia's Black Sea Fleet participated in exercise Aman 21, hosted by Pakistan Navy. It was the first time since 2011 that Russian naval vessels were part of a naval exercise alongside NATO navies. Aman exercise, unlike the Malabar exercises hosted by Indian Navy that focus on naval warfare, is rooted in Pakistan's strong commitment to multilateral cooperation. Russian military contingents have also been doing joint counterterrorism exercises with Pakistan Army. There's a baggage from the past for sure, but over the last 15 years, cooperation has increased and there's a clear sense in both capitals of the potential of bilateral relations. Pakistan's geo-economic approach is also in tune with regional economic and trade cooperation sponsored and promoted by China, Russia, and broadly the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This approach is also in clear contrast to how Quad is developing in an attempt to undermine China and by extension Russia. To discuss Pakistan-Russia relations further, I have with me Ambassador Tehmina Janjua, former Foreign Secretary, and Nayanima Basu, Senior Associate Editor at The Print, who covers diplomacy and strategic affairs. Ms. Basu, thank you for being on the program. I was reading one of the news analyses that you put out with reference to Sergei Lavrov's India visit, and also, of course, subsequent, the last leg of his South Asia tour. And you wrote that this visit, he was seen to have added, and I'm actually quoting from what you wrote, seen to have added a new dimension to the already tense environment in the region. And then you go on to say that Moscow was perceived to be hyphenating its relationship with the two countries. Now, this is a very interesting term because from where Pakistan is, it seems to us that Russia is basically looking at India and Pakistan with respect to the advantages or convergence of interest that Russia can have with reference to both countries, regardless of the tensions between India and Pakistan. So when you say hyphenating, what exactly do you mean?
So to answer your question, Mr. Haider, is that India has always, strived for the fact that when its foreign policy with its other partners are being analyzed or being dealt upon, it will not be seen, in tandem with Pakistan, which is what in the Indian strategic community and the diplomatic community is what is known as to be hyphenating with India and Pakistan. Now, that was something that was always there when it came to the US administration, and we've seen that happening in the past. And that's something that the Indian government, irrespective of which government is in power, it has worked a lot towards seeing to the fact that whenever they are talking of India, they are not hyphenating Pakistan, so to say. Which is why also, if you see under the present government, since the time tensions have begun and they have really climaxed, for whatever reasons, we've seen so many incidents happening. So for the Narendra Modi government, it has always been an effort to see that any foreign dignitary, even if it's friend, it's an ally, whoever is coming in, they have their individual foreign policy, yes, of course, and India respects it. However, when it comes to dealing with Pakistan, they can do it. No, we have no say in that. However, for the government, from the government's perspective, the policy is that when you come to Delhi, you can go to Pakistan, but, the signaling has to be right, the messaging has to be right, which in Russia's case has not really happened. And that has become a little cause of worry within the Indian, foreign policy community.
Right, I hear you. But here's the thing, it seems to me, it would be safe to surmise that hyphenation is something that Delhi seems to, talk about, or basically look at, rather than Russia hyphenating India and Pakistan. But leaving that aside, you also said that the tour, Lavrov's tour, came amid speculation about strains in New Delhi's relationship with Moscow over India's role in the Quad. Now, I certainly want you to throw some more light on this. And secondly, you also said that he flew to Islamabad directly from New Delhi, something that the Modi government is strictly opposed to. So can you explain for our viewers what exactly these two issues stand for?
I'll take your second question first because that's related to what I said, when I started speaking, is that there's this unsaid rule within the Indian foreign policy that when you are coming to India, you would not directly go to Pakistan. And, when you are in Pakistan, you will not talk about issues that are, bilateral in nature. And also, if you've seen that has happened in the case of U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin when he was here, he went to Afghanistan. From there, I'm sure he dialed the Pakistani authorities. And I hear that there was a considerable amount of dialogue they had. And there are several past examples of that. When dignitaries have visited India, they had to, go back to their home country and then come to Pakistan. That's what the practice has been. However, now coming to your second question, now this is something which has become a cause of huge concern when it comes to the relationship between India and Russia. And if you really see, it sort of started from the time of former Prime Minister Abdul Vajpayee, when India's ties with US started to take a definitive change, right? So a warming up of ties between India and US, which was not there in the post-Cold War era. And the ties with Russia has been more of transactional in nature. Having said that, you're well aware that we still import about more than 80% of India's defense imports take place from Russia. So, but then, yes, they have been India's old allies. According to our External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, it is a time-tested relationship. However, we've seen how Russian Foreign Minister Mr. Lavrov have constantly spoken about Indo-Pacific and Quad to be anti-China. Even then, India has sort of ignored it and gone ahead, and we are very deeply integrated now when it comes to the Indo-Pacific as well as Quad. We also had the Quad summit last month. So having all this put together, and we've heard also what the Russian foreign minister stated in Pakistan while he was there, that the US is having its divisive policies here to divide the South Asian region, something that he did not say when he was in India. In fact, in India, he said that US was not discussed at all. So that also has not gone down very well with India. But for obvious reasons, yes, Russia was also the country where, India had a discussion with the Chinese foreign minister with the ongoing standoff. India, in all practical purposes, calls it the Moscow Agreement, based on which the disengagement discussions are now going on. So I think the relationship between India and Russia is now in a very interesting standpoint, and I guess this is a milestone. Maybe the things are changing. The world itself is in a flux right now with the pandemic raging on. And also one more thing. That the India-Russia, they have had their annual summits for the past 20 years. It was only last year it did not take place, and the reason that was given by both sides was about pandemic. But even now, 4 months within 2021, we still are not clear when will the summit take place.
Right. Thank you so much. That was Nayanima Basu speaking with us. Let me go straight to Ambassador Janjua. Ambassador Janjua, I wanted you to hear this point of view. There are other analyses also coming out of India that talk about sort of chilling of relations between Moscow and New Delhi. Now, given that backdrop, give us your sense of the evolving relations between Pakistan and Russia.
Well, Pakistan-Russia relations have been on a steady upward growth trajectory. through years of action work that have been done in the various working groups with Russia. I have been a part of these negotiations when I was Foreign Secretary, and I found the conversations with my Russian colleagues to be extremely interesting and ones that reflected an understanding of Pakistan's positions on a number of issues. We have good structures in place that continue to help us have these conversations in a more organized manner. There we have, as far as the economic relations are concerned, the Intergovernmental Commission that will look at all economic issues, and that's going to meet later in the year as well. But the most important thing that we see in the Pakistan-Russia relationship right now in its upward trajectory, the underlying factor is that Pakistan is seeking stability in the region, and so is Russia. Pakistan, as the foreign minister said, our foreign minister said, Russia is a factor of stability in an uncertain world. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, seeing all the sea of instability around us, and the Russian foreign minister did refer to the Middle East. He spoke about finding resolution to the Palestine issue. He also spoke about Kashmir, in which he said, alluded to it, Kashmir basically saying that this needs to be resolved in accordance with the UN. He didn't refer to the resolutions, but in a general sense, the UN principles. So that's something which is important. As far as Pakistan-Russia relationship is also concerned, and the regional stability issue is concerned, Afghanistan is another area of convergence between the two countries. This is, both countries agree and believe that there should be, that the path to end the chaos in Afghanistan is through peace, through peaceful discussions and negotiations, and that's why Russia has played an important role in this regard. It had a meeting with the Taliban and the three major countries, including Russia, Pakistan, and Iran, in Moscow recently, which was a very important opportunity to discuss how Russia saw Afghanistan. And then obviously the Russian foreign minister also referred of having a second meeting in this regard. Russia is also interested in the Central Asian countries using the opportunities that are available through Gwadar port and through Karachi for the trade to take place. And let's look at historically, Russia had also wanted in the past, though in a different historical context, looking at warm waters, which became an anathema as such for people to talk about. But the reality is that these friends of ours in the Central Asian republics are looking at the possibility of reaching to the oceans, the waters, so to say, and this can be done if peace is established in Afghanistan. And that's why Russia has a very strong interest in Afghanistan. And there have been some very concrete discussions that took place on how to move forward the relationship, whether it's through the North-South pipeline, the railway investment that has been done. And I think an important thing, something which I feel is very close to my heart, is the importance of sharing the possibility of co-production of vaccines, the Sputnik 5, because I believe that the pandemic that Pakistan and the rest of the world faces right now is not the only one that we will be confronted with, but with climate change and all other the problems that we are faced with. We will have pandemics, and therefore we need to work with the Russian knowledge base on trying to promote vaccines and the production of vaccines in Pakistan, an important issue from Pakistan's perspective. Last, the most important thing is also that while working for stability in the region, the Russian foreign minister said that they don't want to be part of any alliances that are against anyone. And for Pakistan is also, we do not want to be aligned in any context that is an adversarial grouping, and therefore some of the comments that were made by the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov in Islamabad have been significant with regard to the regional situation and the danger of the regional situation turning into a difficult one.
Right. Stay with me, Ambassador Janjua. I'm going to return to you with some specific, areas of convergence. But I'm now joined by Dr. Lalwani, Senior Fellow and Director of the South Asia Program at the Stimson Center in Washington, D.C. Samir, one of those sweet ironies of history, call it realpolitik. So the analyses coming out of India after Sergei Lavrov's visit seem to indicate that A, India is worried about growing and evolving relations between Moscow and Islamabad, and also that there's a certain chill factor sort of creeping into Moscow-Delhi relations, given that Moscow is kind of looking at, not particularly to its liking the growing relations between Delhi and Washington. So give me your perspective, inside the Beltway perspective on this.
To be perfectly honest, I don't think there's a whole lot of talk inside the Beltway about these evolving relationships. Nevertheless, I mean, from my perspective, I think what you said is fairly accurate. India gets tweaked every time Russia pays a visit to Pakistan, engages in an exercise, talks about arms sales, talks about Afghanistan. And I think it's a source of concern for India because they've relied on this relationship for decades and continue to rely on it. And I think the Russians are very well aware that just gestures in this direction have an asymmetric impact on the Indian psyche in terms of getting them to attention and reconsidering sort of how they evaluate the relationship. But I do think the structural factor that's driving maybe a slight sort of rebalance is what you described, which is that the Indians are concerned about the Russia-China relationship more than anything else, right? And it's been at times described as an alliance. I don't think it's quite there yet, but in terms of the level of cooperation that Russia and China are engaging in this, or the depth of exercises, the cooperation on emerging technologies, including space and artificial intelligence, and the kinds of technology cooperation that were previously reserved for the Indians, both the sales as well as co-development, are now being shared with the Chinese. And that, I think, is significant for the Indians because this was their key source, their locomotive for a lot of strategic technology, particularly nuclear propulsion submarines. So because of this, I think India is starting to rebalance. Certainly the Quad, its relationship with the United States, is causing it to rebalance more generally, and Russia is showing that it has some cards to play as well, and it can pivot elsewhere in South Asia, especially for the equities it's concerned about, which, I think Afghanistan is a large one, most importantly just for the counterterrorism concerns in ISIS.
Right. Now, I agree with you because here's the thing. India has got upwards of $5 billion deal for S-400 A280. So those are top dollars. The general issue assault rifle for the Indian military is being, they're getting it from Russia, one of the AKs. Similarly, they've got this cooperation on BrahMos cruise missile. And you talked about the propulsion system, the submarines, and also how Russia has been helping India with the carriers and all that. Now, so this is a substantive sort of, partnership, I would say, defense procurement and partnership. On the other hand, there is clearly, and I'm using the term Quad more as a metaphor than as something which is a military alliance, but so there is this sort of closeness between the United States and India. So let's assume that even if India were to try and balance these, the US approach with CAATSA and various other legislations, it will become increasingly difficult for India to figure out. It will either tell the United States to, okay, we really want to have this relationship with Moscow, or it'll say that, we'll have to somehow put more eggs in the US basket than in Russia's basket. So this dilemma is, given the kind of evolution of where things are going, seems to be inevitable.
Yeah, I think this challenge is going to be true for a lot of countries. Getting adjusted to what the nature of the geopolitical marketplace is. At least for the United States, we've been so used to wielding outsized influence and dictating the terms of relationships, and that certainly has to evolve in a contemporary environment where we've acknowledged that the world is moving towards more multipolar environments. We've acknowledged that we need greater burden sharing and partnerships. We can't sort of just rely on ourselves to achieve all our interests. So, yeah, that's going to be a challenge for us. I think we certainly do ourselves no favors with legislation like CATSA, which applies secondary sanctions to a whole bunch of our friends and allies, and can probably set it back. So, in short, I think there is debate within Washington acknowledging some of these challenges, that there's requirements for adjustments. Hopefully that leads to some room for maneuver for a lot of our partners, like India with Russia, like Pakistan with China, and at the same time still being very clear-eyed about what U.S. interests are and not compromising them, but acknowledging that countries have other interests and other partnerships in their region for specific domains, and that's just a reality we have to get comfortable with.
That's a very interesting thought, Samir. I think it will be in the fitness of things for the United States to actually begin, for once, to also look at the interests of other countries and their compulsions. But thank you so much. That was Dr. Samir Lalwani speaking with us. We go back to Ambassador Janjua here. Ambassador Janjua, this is obviously a very interesting, shall I say, bend in the river, so to speak. And there's only this far that one can see and prognosticate, but beyond that is the unknown. It does seem to me that this great power rivalry is going to force many, middling states to ultimately have to choose one way or the other. If not entirely, but at least, have more of a leg in one camp than the other.
Well, I think there has to be. This is the beginning of the U.S. administration, and of course, all the discussions that are going on about the possibility of pushing back China and all of that. And I guess that's what you're referring to. It is a difficult situation for countries within the region, within our regions as well. But it is something that we must have very clarity on. And I think it is something on which we need to have conversations with the US, very clearly identifying that as far as Pakistan is concerned, we are not being, and we've said it categorically, it's been said by the Prime Minister, it's been said by various parts of senior officials in the government, that Pakistan is not going to step into one boat or the other. We want to have excellent relations with both China and the United States. And let me underscore the fact that the Chinese side has always indicated to us that we should have work for the best of relations with the United States. The situation, because as far as China is concerned, China has categorically said that they can look after their interests very well. Yes, but we need to continue to indicate very clearly that in the most difficult times, it was China that stood by Pakistan. And as far as CPEC is concerned, which is a matter of some concern to policymakers within the United States, I think it is also time to underscore the fact that as far as CPEC is economic development project in which Pakistan, the people of Pakistan are there to gain. And this is something that the United States must continue to support. As far as CPEC is concerned, there are prospects of synergies with Russia as well, which are immense. Russia also needs multiple points of access and movement of its goods to the south, whether through Gwadar and I've already spoken of the Central Asian republics through the Central Asian republics as well. So as far as Russia-Pakistan relations are concerned and China-Pakistan relations are concerned, CPEC also provides an important possibility of synergies with the Russian Federation as well. And this visit of Foreign Minister Lavrov, there were extensive discussions and there were possibilities of obviously they spoke about the two foreign ministers spoke about Afghanistan, but they spoke about the possibility of cooperation in energy, industrial modernization, railways and aviation. And these are areas, and of course, as I said earlier, the ultimate, most important, and in my opinion, as health becoming a security issue now is the production, if possible and as soon as possible, of vaccines by Pakistani and pharmaceutical companies. Sputnik is offering these opportunities to companies in Europe as well, and therefore we should latch on to this possibility and see how our own pharmaceutical companies can develop and in a way where they can become the base for production and use of vaccines in Pakistan.
Absolutely. I'm very happy you talked about the vaccine and, health relations in terms of getting and knowing best practices in healthcare and possibly also education, especially on the STEM side. But thank you so much. That was Ambassador Tehmina Janjua speaking with us. Joining me now is Dr. Kamran Gasanov, Senior Lecturer at People's Friendship University of Russia. Dr. Gastenov, thank you for being on the program. We were discussing Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's visit to India and then the two-day visit to Pakistan, where he met with the Pakistani leadership on the civilian side also, the military side also. Lots of issues were discussed: energy, cooperation, counterterrorism, military, other military issues, trade, and so it seems that Pakistan-Russia relations are now on a solid, strong footing. How do you look at the relationship, and how do you see it can be furthered, in terms of sort of greater investment into areas of convergence?
So I think that our relations with Pakistan are now growing. And there are a lot of indices of this. First of all, we share a common view to the international relations. We would like to create a multipolar world, and that every major or middle player could have its own voice without any domination of one player. As the United States. And I see also the incentive from the side of Pakistan, because Pakistan would like to intensify their ties with Russia, because the United States are moving closer to India. The first reason for our cooperation, when we speak about political cooperation, is Afghanistan, and we share here a common approach. We both like to invite Taliban to create inclusive government to stabilize Afghanistan. And recently in March, we had a meeting in Moscow with the participation of Pakistani representatives, also Chinese and American. We should not also forget about economy, because economy is also important for us. Last year, our turnover grew by almost 50%. This is not so high as the turnover between Russia and India, but nevertheless we are growing. And Russia also participates in energy project in so-called North-South pipeline, which soon will be renamed to Pakistani pipeline. And also Russia recently proposed to Pakistan supply gas, LNG supplies, and I think this is also a good reason to cooperate. And we should not also forget about security. Pakistan is part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and we both like to fight terrorism together. And Pakistan last year took part in our military drills. called Caucasus 2020, and this is also makes our relations very close.
Right. So Russian special forces, Pakistani special forces have been exercising together, counterterrorism exercises for the last 3-4 years, in fact, and the Russian contingent of the Russian Black Sea Fleet also participated last February in Aman 21. The first time since 2011 that Russian naval vessels were participating in a multilateral exercise alongside the NATO navies. But Dr. Gasanov, give me your sense of, do you look at this as a relationship that is and can head towards strategic partnership, or do you think it's more transactional?
I think that there is a lot of space to make this cooperation more close. We shouldn't forget about that the first ally of Russia in the region is India. And as I said, when India moves closer to the United States, Russia should also balance its regional policy, and Pakistan should be more close to Russia. And I think these relations are not still relations of allies or strategic partners, but they are moving to this direction as what we see in relations between Turkey and Russia. This also we not also realize, but we have a lot of common interests, and these common interests in future, maybe someday, will make us full strategic partners.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamran Gastenov, speaking with us. We shall take a short break and return to discuss right-wing Hindutva threats to another mosque in India's Uttar Pradesh state. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Focus. First, it was Babri Mosque at Ayodhya in Uttar Pradesh. Now there's a century-old Gyanvapi Mosque at Varanasi in UP. Petitions filed by right-wing Hindu groups claim that Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb demolished a portion of the Kashi Vishwanath temple to build the mosque in the 17th century. The temple and the mosque are adjacent. A court in Varanasi directed the Archaeological Survey of India last Thursday to determine whether the mosque standing at present at the disputed site, and this is in quotes, is a superimposition, alteration, or addition, or there's a structural overlapping of any kind with or over any other religious structure. Over any other religious structure is, of course, a reference to the temple adjacent to the mosque. The court has ordered a 5-member committee comprising 2 Hindus, 2 Muslims, and an archaeological expert to oversee the comprehensive physical survey. It has set 31 May as the date for the next hearing. Varanasi, incidentally, is a parliamentary constituency for India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party came to prominence as a political force in the 1980s when it launched a movement to build a Ram temple in Ayodhya. To discuss this further, I'm joined by Abdul Razack Khan, a political analyst based in Bangalore, and Nishant Verma, a political affairs commentator based in Delhi. Let me begin with Nishant Verma. Nishant Verma, give me your initial thoughts on this.
There is Places of Worship Act 1991, which is intact in India, the special provision. It has clarified that all the religious places, the way they were on 15th of August 1947, shall remain and will not be altered come what may. This was highlighted in the most recent Ram Janam Bhoomi Babri Masjid matter in the Honorable Supreme Court of India also. So considering that, it is very clear that anything, any structure, any worship place which was and remains ever since 15th of August 1947 shall not be altered. Now, in a democracy, you have a right to go anywhere and try to seek justice. The right-wingers have been doing this. They are free to move around in courts of laws and try it. However, this shall not change anything on the ground, because 15th of August 1947 and the Special Provision Act of Places of Worship 1991 is there. So anyone can, go to the court, create a halabu, but then it's not going to be helpful. This is basically it.
But Nishant, that didn't save the Babri Mosque. The law is there, I agree with you, but it didn't save the Babri Mosque.
When you're talking about the Ram Janambhoomi Babri Mosque issue, we must remember that the Places of Worship Act 1991, the special provision, excluded the Ram Janambhoomi Babri Masjid. Apart from that, everything is encompassed, covered, and protected as per this law. So whatever is the outcome of the Babri Masjid matter is separate. But anything other than that shall remain the way it is, unaltered, whichever was recorded on 15th of August 1947.
Okay, let me pull in Abdul Razack Khan here. Abdul Razack Khan, Nishant Verma is very clear that there is the law, and while the right wing can agitate the issue in courts, it's not going to change anything on the ground. Is that something you would agree with?
Definitely, yes. I would add to what Nishant Vermaji said. Firstly, Asia's unity in diversity is the idea of India. But there would be some troublemongers who do not want to be united, who do create these kind of things. Firstly, let me tell you, on the 9th of November 2019, when the Supreme Court, gave out the verdict for the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid issue, the verdict also said that the status of no other place of worship will be allowed to change. So this is there in the Supreme Court verdict that came out on the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid. Along with this, there is another act, constitutional act, that would be in 1958, Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites Remains Act. That means that any monument before 1958 would be considered as an ancient monument. It would not be disturbed. So this masjid, Gyanwapi Masjid, also the Kashi Vishwanath Temple, comes under the Ancient Monument and Archaeological Sites Remains Act. Along with this, let me tell you, this is only the civil court which has entertained the plea. Further, if this plea is entertained, it will open the floodgates. If you see in India, there are people of many faiths who pray at one place. But if these kind of pleas or any kind of things are entertained any further, this will open floodgates. I'm saying that there are many places in India where you can see peaceful coexistence of people of different faiths. That is why in the opening statement I said, living together is the example for India. Unity in diversity is the idea of India, I could say.
Right. Abdul Razack Khan, I agree with you that was the idea of India. It's enshrined in the Constitution also. Dr. Ambedkar was very clear about those principles. But what we have witnessed over the last at least 2.5 years, counting out the first 5 years of the current BJP government, is something that does not really give us much confidence with reference to the spirit, the letter and spirit of the law and the Constitution. I mean, there are any number of, I don't have to tell you that, you're an Indian citizen yourself, so I'm sure you know that. There's so many instances of how this government has been not only tacitly supporting vigilante action, but also legislating in ways that discriminate against the minorities.
The central government, the BJP Sarkar, honestly speaking, the Modi Sarkar can have a control on all the institutions of this country, which are governed by them, except for the judiciary, I could say, which is not controlled by the BJP Sarkar. So the judicial system of this country is very beautiful. Maybe the civil judge would have entertained this plea, but citing the Supreme Court verdict that I told you just now about the Ram Janmabhoomi verdict, except for the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid dispute, no other title of any worship place would be entertained. This was what was said during the 1991 Places of Worship Act, that is the Special Provisions Act. Now I'm saying about the Babri Masjid verdict, which also highlighted that no other place of worship will be allowed to change. So whatever verdict or whatever the lower courts might do, when it comes to Supreme Court, the All India Muslim Personal Law Board has already gone to the High Court to appeal against the archaeological survey. So let us see how it goes. I'm saying that the BJP Sarkar can control and do whatever they want, but they cannot control the judiciary. That's an independent institution, and we are very confident that the court wouldn't entertain this plea any further.
Okay. Before I wrap up, let me go back to Nishant Verma here. Nishant Verma, the Indian Supreme Court in the 80s, also in the early 90s, was often cited as a very activist court. But recently there's been much criticism, and I'm talking about criticism from within India, criticism by jurists and also former justices of the Supreme Court in terms of some of the decisions taken by the Supreme Court, including that of the Ram Janambhoomi Babri Mosque decision, which considered the action at the mosque as criminal, and yet came up with a verdict that was looked at by most people as essentially placating the right-wing Hindutva groups. So how confident are you with reference to the independence of the judiciary that Razack Khan is talking about?
First of all, let me clarify this, that as a political analyst, I have always understood in a manner that politicians face insult while judiciary faces criticism. Because politicians, their actions either make a country or destroy. However, the courts, they adjudicate matter. And obviously, there is one side which loses the case. So there is definitely criticism which comes into play. Our courts, including the Honorable Supreme Court, has time and again said that you're free to criticize our judgments, however, not insult. And that's exactly what we do. So this is the first line difference. Number two, we were talking about the Ram Janambhoomi and Babri Masjid issue. One of the aspects in the order of the Honorable Supreme Court while providing the land to the right-wingers for Ram Janam temple, it also highlighted in bold in some manners that there was no demolition of any sort below the mosque, and they recognized the structure as a mosque. So that also needs to be understood here. So that's exactly why I started by saying that the right-wingers have a right to go to the courts and try their luck. However, with the Special Provision Act of 1991, places of worship, it cannot alter anything, as I explained earlier. And I would like to finish it again the way I started, that yes, Mirza Ghalib said, "Bevkoof itne sare bhare hain, dhoondte raho hazaron."
Oh, great. That was Nishant Verma. Thank you also to Abdul Razack Khan for speaking with us. This is all from InFocus this evening. We shall see you tomorrow at the same time. Keep following our latest updates on social media at indus.news. And yes, given the third COVID-19 wave, both in Pakistan and across the world, stay safe and follow the non-vaccine safety protocols. Good night and goodbye.